Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Mishnah Mastery. An exciting class for us tonight as we start Masechet Sukkah. How amazing. 5 chapters which are going to be dealing with, the first 2 chapters will deal with the structure of the Sukkah, and then afterwards we get into the Lulav and Esrog and into some other things as well. So let's get the text up on the screen. Hopefully we won't have any technological difficulties tonight. I do have some pictures. Everyone loves a picture. I do have some pictures that I'm going to try and sprinkle into the share tonight. So hopefully the technology will not fail us. Are we ready? There are people here. Are we ready?
Yes.
Lovely. Good on you. So, Masechet Sukkah, chapter 1, Perek Aleph, starting with Mishnah Aleph. We're going to be dealing with the height of the Sukkah, the minimum and the maximum as well. Says the Mishnah, Sukkah shehi gavoha lemala me'esrim ama pasula. A Sukkah that is higher than 20 amos from ground level, from floor to roof. So even if the sukkah is on top of a roof of a building, it could still be kosher. From the floor of the sukkah, though, to the top of the sukkah, to the top of the skach, it cannot be more than 20 amot high. If it is, that's a bit too permanent, says the first position in the Mishnah. It is pasul. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it will be mashir. It will be still kosher. But the halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda. The halacha is like the first position in the Mishnah. We need to have a temporary structure. And in order to have something that can stand more than 20 amos tall, that is going to make it too permanent. And it's not going to be okay. And also, if it is more than 20 amos high, your eyes are not really going to notice the schach. And the sukkah is all about the schach. That is why you could literally cut off the roof of your house and put on some schach and it will still be a kosher sukkah. It's all about the schach. It's all about the walls as well, but it's all about the schach. So that's the first point in our Mishnah. V'sha'ena gavoha asara tefachim. And if your sukkah is lower than 10 tefachim from the floor level of the sukkah to the schach of the sukkah, there is less than 10 tefachim of hollow airspace, or there are not at least 3 walls. What do we mean when we say 3 walls? We really mean 2 walls and a little bit, but that is halachically 3 walls. So if it does not have 3 walls, it's also not going to be kosher. Or the amount of shade that gets accomplished by the schach covering. If there is more sunlight getting through than there is shade, says the Mishnah, psula, it is not going to be a kosher sukkah, which means that you cannot fulfill the mitzvah of leishev basukkah using that kind of sukkah. Sukkah yeshana. What about a Sukkah Yeshana? It translates that there is an old Sukkah, and in a minute we'll really understand what we mean by a Sukkah Yeshana. So Beis Shammai Poslin, Beis Shammai rule that you may not fulfill your mitzvah with it. It is pasul for the mitzvah of Sukkah. Uveis Hillel Machshirin. Beis Hillel say that it is kosher. So now we have to understand what it means. Ve'ezohi Sukkah Yeshana. What is a Sukkah Yeshana? Answers the Mishnah, anything that was built more than 30 days before the Chag, which means that, according to Beis Hillel, even if it was made as a hut, it can still end up being a kosher sukkah. According to Beis Shammai, it will not be a kosher sukkah. You have to have a sukkah that was built for the sake of the mitzvah of a sukkah. So anything that was built before that time and wasn't built with the express purpose of fulfilling the mitzvah of sitting in a sukkah, that is not going to be a kosher sukkah according to Beis Shammai. According to Beis Hillel, it can be, as long as you, I mean, we have this concept of just kind of flicking the schach, just to kind of mentally recognize that it's going to be used as the mitzvah of Sukkah. So as long as you're doing that within 30 days of the Chag, you're going to be able to use it. So when we lived in Israel, we had a Sukkah roof, which was like a pagoda, and it had these slats, which were kosher schach. So all we had to do was just poke up the slats a few days before Sukkot, and then that was our Sukkah ready to go. Says the Mishnah, finishing off Mishnah Aleph, Aval, im asra l'shem chag, afilu mitchilas hashana kashera. Says the Mishnah though, if you have made a sukkah for the express purpose of it being used as a sukkah on Sukkot, then according to the position in the Mishnah, you are going to be able to use it even if you built it way in advance before Sukkah was even a twinkle in your eye. So that is the end of Mishnah Aleph. Let's scroll down and have a look at Mishnah Base. By the way, if at any point you are having difficulty picturing the scenarios that we're talking about, then do give me a shout, and I can probably dig up a picture for whatever is confusing us. So,
can I ask you a question about the translation there? It says even at the beginning of the year.
Yes.
The beginning of the year, according to the Mishnah, would have only been 15 days before.
Very good.
In that 30-day period. So it can't be talking about January in the Mishnah.
Very good. So it means the year once last Sukkot's finished.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. So you made it for Sukkot's last year, and then you haven't done anything since then, and it's still a kosher Sukkah. So if you were to leave a Sukkah up for the entire year, then see, I think it would be like this: that as long as it's there for the express purpose of a Sukkah, then perhaps even the practical implication nowadays would be you don't have to do anything. As I said, I had a Sukkah roof when I lived in Israel, and I was told that I have to readjust the schach each year because I used it as a shelter throughout the rest of the year. It wasn't for the express purpose of the Sukkah. So that's what it means. Very good question. When it says afilu mitchilas hashana, even from last Sukkot, the beginning of that year, it would still be valid. Excellent. All right. Mishnah Base, dealing with the schach. Says the Mishnah, ha'oset sukaso tachas ha'ilan. If you make your sukkah under a tree. The problem being that you have got your sukkah, which is kosher, and it's got its schach, and it's all hunky-dory. But you are also generating shade on account of the leaves of the tree, which are attached to the tree. So we're gonna also see that we have to have schach, which is detached, which is natural, etc., etc. But the primary shade is being generated by the shade of a tree. So ha'oses sukaso tachas ha'ilan, says the Mishnah, ki'ilu asa b'toch habayis. It's as if you are sitting inside your house because the shade which is being provided is not being generated by kosher schach, valid schach. Sukkah al gabe sukkah. What if you have a double-storied sukkah? Let's see if it's in this picture. Yes, it is. So what if you have a two-storied sukkah, like we see in our picture over here? And let's see if I can quickly get it on here as well. I've got the fastest finger first online. Okay, so we have two sukkahs, one on top of each other. Says the Mishnah, ha'elyona kashera, assuming you can get up into it, of course. The upper one is going to be kosher, the hatachtona pasula, and the lower one is going to be pasul. Says the Mishnah, however, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, im ein diurin ba'elyona, if there is no one trying to reside in the upper floor of the sukkah, the upper sukkah, then hatachtona kashera, then the lower one is going to be kosher. So we have a situation in the first picture where the residency is already being taken up by this first sukkah, which is going to therefore invalidate the ability for people lower down to use the schach. Whereas in the second situation, where you've effectively just got 2 layers of schach, and that's fine, you're allowed to have 2 layers of schach. There's no one occupying the top sukkah, which would have enough of the right dimensions to be considered kosher, but they're not using it, and therefore the lower sukkah is allowed to be used for the mitzvah of sukkah, and all you then got is basically a double-storied roof, which is completely fine. You're allowed to have a double-storied roof. Jumping back then into our text, let's see how quickly we can do this. Jumping back into our text, we move on then to Mishnah Gimel. I bet I'm going to need a picture for this one as well, but let's see how we go. So schach has to be something that is not a kli, that is not a vessel. It has to be something which can contract tumah, and it has to be something which can grow from the ground. So says the Mishnah in Mishnah Gimel, Peiras aleha sadin mipnei hachama. If you spread a sheet over the top of the schach in order to protect you from sunlight, or tachteha, or you have it suspended within the airspace of the sukkah, but it's blocking the schach, and it's there in order to mipnei hanashar, in order to catch any falling leaves, or sheperas al gabe hakinof, or you have spread a canopy over the frame of the bed. So let's say a person's trying to sleep in bed in the sukkah, and he has spread a canopy over his bed in order to protect him. So pasul, you're not going to be able to use that sukkah, right? Either the whole sukkah is going to be out of bounds because you spread a sheet, or if you spread a sheet over your bed, you're not going to be able to sleep in the bed because that airspace that you're using is now not covered by schach. Aval, poresu al gabe naklite hamita. But if you have got a sheet spread over the bed in a triangular shape, all right, so if we can picture, if we can, let me know if you can't and I'll show us a picture. But if you've got a bed and across it is a pole, and then dangling over either side of the pole, you've got, say, a mosquito net or some other kind of net in order to protect you there. So because you have not got an actual flat covering over you, that is not going to invalidate the ability to spread something over you. But to spread something flat, like a 4-poster bed, or to spread it over the entirety of a sukkah, that is going to invalidate your ability to use the sukkah. Okay, for this one, we probably will need, for Mishnah Daled, I think we will probably need to get a picture up. So let's do that now. Everybody should be able to see this next page. Oh, there you go. There's your 2-poster bed with a net over it. So that is going to be fine according to the din in the Mishnah. All right, we're in this picture over here. Let's have a look at Mishnah Daled. Forgive the time that I'm switching over. Hitla aleha es hagefen v'yes hadlas v'yes hakisum v'sikech al gaba pusula. Says the Mishnah, if you were to train, it translates it in, well, we'll put up the screen in a minute, but if you have trained and directed a vine or a gourd or ivy, and you have directed the growth of these branches and these leaves to v'sikech al gaba, to create the schach over a sukkah, then that is going to be pasul. So over here, they have trained and directed and grown these branches to be suspended over the schach, so that because they are attached still to the vine or to the plant or whatever it is, that is going to be pasul. V'im haya sikuch harbe mehen or shekitzatzan kashera. Says the Mishnah though, if you have more schach than vine, Or, so here you go. Here's an example of more schach than vine. So here we've got loads and loads of kosher schach, and then running throughout that as well, you've also got some leaves. So if that was the case, as long as you got majority of kosher schach than anything else that's flowing through, then the Mishnah says kashera. Or if you cut it off, or if it's detached, then that is also going to be legitimate. Zehaklal. This is the rule, says the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, this is the rule. Getting back into our Mishnah again. Oh yeah, I mean, this is seamless, guys. Kol shehu mekabel tuma, anything which can be mekabel tuma ve'en gidula min haaretz, and doesn't grow from the ground, ein mesakechin bo. It may not be used as kosher schach. V'chol davar she'einu mekabel tuma, and anything that does not contract tuma ve'gidula min haaretz, and it does grow from the ground, mesakechin bo, then it can be used as valid material in order to cover the sukkah, in order to be valid and kosher. Schach. Says the Mishnah in Mishnah Hay, following on from this, Chavile kash. So kash is straw. Chavile eitzim. Eitzim is wood. And the chavile zradin. Zradin are fresh shoots. So straw, wood, and fresh shoots should all theoretically be kosher for use as schach. But the Mishnah says chavile kash, if they are bundles of straw, or they are bundles of wood, or they are bundles of fresh shoots, and they are bound together, and there's a certain amount, there's 25 at least, all packed together into bundles, then ein mesakechin bahen, you cannot use them as kosher schach. But the chulan shehitiran kasheros. But if they were untied and they're just flat and being used, even if they are piled really, really high and really, really thick, the Mishnah says they are going to be kosher. The chulan kasheros ledefanos, and all of these different things could also be used as material for the walls of the sukkah as well. Says the Mishnah, Mesakechin b'nesarim, if you were to use planks of wood, so rather than just kind of natural branches and things like that, instead you're using a cut beam. So the Mishnah says, Mesakechin b'nesarim, you can use planks of wood, Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir also, Rabbi Meir says, you may not use planks of wood. Let me just delve into something that has just caught my eye. So if these planks of wood are more than 4 tefachim wide, then everyone would agree that you can't use, we're going to get to that in a second, aren't we? But if they're less than 4 tefachim wide, each plank, then that's where our machlokes, sorry, if they're less than 3 tefachim, then everyone will agree that you can use them. If they're more than 4 tefachim wide, everyone will agree that you can't. And our machlokes rests in beams that are between 3 and 4 tefachim. Rabbi Yehuda says, since they are not 4 tefachim and it's not an impressive enough width, you're going to be allowed to use them, and they're not going to be mistaken for roof paneling. Rabbi Meir says that that you're already entering into a measurement which is more than lavud. We haven't necessarily explained lavud in the context of these Mishnayos, but lavud is an airspace of 3 tefachim or less, which would be considered halachically closed. So because you are entering into a world of more than 3 tefachim, according to Rabbi Meir, you are not going to be able to use those planks of wood. So, Mesakechin b'nesarim, you can use planks, Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir oser, Rabbi Meir says you can't, and we're talking about planks within 3 to 4 tefachim for the machlokes. But the Mishnah says, Natan aleha neser shu rachav abar tefachim kashera uvilvad shlo yishan tachtav. So if you were to put a plank down of 4 tefachim, then as long as you are not resting or doing anything underneath that particular airspace, but you've still got a sukkah with kosher schach and it meets all the right dimensions, it's just that you've got one area which has schach, which is 4 tefachim or more, then as long as you're not using that airspace, then you're still going to be okay. So just to kind of make sure that we get that, pieces of wood that are less than 3 tefachim, everyone will agree that they count as kosher schach. Anything which is 3 to 4 tefachim wide, there's machlokes. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's going to be fine. According to Rabbi Meir, it's not going to be fine. And when it comes to planks that are more than 4 tefachim wide, well, as long as you have got dimensions of your sukkah that are not covered by these planks of 4 tefachim, then as long as you don't sit under those parts intending to fulfill the mitzvah of sukkah, you are going to be fine. Says the Mishnah in Mishnah Zayin, Tikra she'ein aleha Tikra she'ein aleha ma'azeva. If you have wooden roof, you've got panel, you've got beams, you've got planks of wood, which are fulfilling the criteria that we've already talked about, and they have no plasterings. They might be quite permanent, but they nonetheless fulfill the criteria of kosher schach. So Rabbi Yehuda says, Beis Shammai Omrim, the position of Beis Shammai is mefakpek v'notel achas mebein time, that you should loosen the planks and you should remove planks to be able to create airspace between these different planks. Beis Hillel Omrim, Beis Hillel says mefakpek, either you can loosen the planks or notel achas mebein time. I guess this mefakpek is the thing that I was alluding to with my sukkah roof, which it has permanence. And I had to loosen the planks to be able to use them, or notel achas mebein time, or you just take out some of them so that you're left with gaps and relying on lavud and relying on other things to be able to have your kosher schach, and then you are good to go. Rabbi Meir, pardon me? Was that a cough or a sneeze? Rabbi Meir says, notel achas mebein time ve'ein mefakpek. Rabbi Meir says you would only need to remove some of these planks, ve'ein mefakpek, and you would not need to loosen the planks at all. That's not required in the world of Rabbi Meir. Says the Mishnah, continuing into Mishnah Ches, hamakare sukaso b'shibudin or ba'aruchos hamita. If you are using as your schach, you're planning to use iron, says spits there, iron poles, or ba'aruchos hamita, or you're using bedposts. Says the Mishnah, in yesh revach beinehem kamosan kashera. If the space between them is equal, it is valid. Let's have a little look at what we might be talking about over here. That's our beams that we were talking about. Oh. Oh, we don't have a picture of it. I think this is what we're talking about, though. Conceptually, at the very least. If we are using, as we said, things which are not going to be valid as schach, we've got these iron spikes, these iron poles, and we've got bedposts. So im yesh revach beineim kamosan kasher. As long as you're not creating too much space, utilizing these materials between your kosher schach, then the din is going to be that your sukkah is kosher. So, for example, if we think of a sukkah which has got a pole running through the middle or running through different parts, wherever it might be, so metal is not kosher schach, but as long as it's not going beyond this 4 tefachim period, this 4 tefachim amount, and as long as you are leaving yourself with enough kosher schach, so then you're going to end up with a kosher sukkah. And finally, the final din in Mishnah Test, hachotet bagadish la'asos bo sukkah eino sukkah. If you dig out a what would you call this? Not a bale of hay, but you've got an enormous mound of hay which you are digging out airspace that would fulfill the dimensions of a kosher sukkah. It's the right height, it's the right floor size, but you have dug it out of a bale of hay, or of a big mound of hay, then it is not going to be a kosher sukkah. Okie dokie. Into Mishnah Test. You know what? I might just leave the picture up because we might find it helpful. So let's just get the picture up, and that's probably the easiest thing. Here we go. Mishnah Test. Hamashalshel defalos milamata. Sorry. Hamashalshel defalos milamala lamata. If you are dangling or lowering your wall from top to bottom, meaning that there is airspace at the bottom of your sukkah. All right, so down here we've got some airspace. So the Mishnah says, "Im gavoha min haaretz shlosha tefachim pesula." If there is 3 tefachim or more, meaning that we're going beyond this principle of lavud, which is now not halachically closing the bottom part of your wall. So if there is 3 tefachim or more of airspace at the bottom of your sukkah, it is going to be possible. Milamata lamala, if you are constructing your sukkah so that the bottom part of the sukkah is wall, and you're then leaving airspace before reaching the top of your schach. So milamata lamala, your sukkah is, the walls are built from the bottom upwards. Im gavoha min haaretz asara tefachim kushered. And as long as you've got 10 tefachim, it is going to be a kosher sukkah. Rabbi Yossi Omer, kashem shemilamata lamala asara tefachim. In the same way that you have to have 10 tefachim from the bottom to the top, kach milamala lamata asara tefachim. According to Rabbi Yossi, then even if you have got 10 tefachim of wall space, however high up it might be, according to Rabbi Yossi, it is going to be kosher. Hirchik et hasikuch min hadafanos shelosha tefachim pesula. If you have distanced your schach 3 tefachim from the wall, so you're going to have 3 tefachim of airspace at the top of your sukkah. Do we have a picture over here? I'm not too sure that we do. No. But if at the top of your sukkah, if you have, I think if you've got 3 tefachim from the top of your wall to the beginning of your schach. So if there's just clear airspace here, let's say the top of your sukkah, of 3 tefachim, and it's completely uncovered. So if it's completely uncovered, the Mishnah is telling us psula. It is not going to be kosher. Whether that means to sit under, or whether that means your whole sukkah is invalid. Let's just have a look. Kiloma. Afilu asa defalos shlemes min haaretz agova hasikach ela sheish revach shel shlosha tefachim min hadoif min haschach ba'orach hasukkah or b'chol psula hasukkah she'avi p'sel min hasan. Yeah. Pardon me?
What's the point of this schach? If you've got a gap between your sukkah and the bottom,
very good, Richard.
Is it floating?
That is right. So yes, if you've got 3 tefachim of airspace at the top of your schach, and it's running along the length, or it's running along the width, and it's detached from your wall, then you are not going to have a kosher sukkah. Let's see what the next picture that I have here is before we determine. Yeah, let's go back into our text. Says the Mishnah in the very next Mishnah, which is none other than Mishnah Yud. Says the Mishnah in Mishnah 10.
Rabbi, you froze there.
Can everyone see me? Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, you can now.
Come on. Are we there? Thumbs up if you can see me. Okay. So, let's go again. Mishnah Yud. If you have cut the roof off your house. L'sikech al gabav, and you have put schach on top of it. Im yesh min hakotel l'sikuch 4 amos pesula. If there is a distance of 4 amos from the wall to the schach, then pasul. It is going to be pasul. If it's less than that, it's going to be kosher, but we're going to have something called a dofen akuma, which means that we're going to halachically bend our wall. So if we can picture, can we all picture a sukkah roof? Can we all picture a hole in the roof of our house where there is ceiling space between the wall and the start of the sukkah, but it's less than 3 amot. So the airspace of your sukkah is going to be within the schach. You're only going to be able to sit under the schach to be able to fulfill the mitzvah. But if you have ceiling space from the edge of your schach to the wall, as long as it's less than 4 amot, it's still going to be a kosher sukkah. But your ceiling is going to be considered a wall. It's not going to be considered a roof. And that's because of the principle of dofen akuma. The wall bends towards the starting point of your sukkah. So you can't sit under it to fulfill the mitzvah, but you also don't invalidate the actual sukkah, which is why you can have sukkah roofs where you're not cutting out the whole ceiling space or the whole roof space of the room. You're leaving support still from any side with ceiling, actual physical ceiling, but that would be considered a wall for all intents and purposes of sukkahs. But if that space is 4 amot or more, then the Mishnah says it is going to be pasul. Continues the Mishnah, v'chein chatzer, similarly a courtyard, shehi mukefes achsadra, which has a, what would you call it, a canopy of some kind, a balcony, what does it call it there? Columns. It's basically a shelter that runs around the outer perimeter of your courtyard. The same ruling is going to apply. You could theoretically turn that whole courtyard into a sukkah as long as you're not leaving 4 amot of actual physical structure on either side. Continues the Mishnah. Sukkah gedola, a big sukkah, shehikufa b'davar she'ein mesakachin bo, im yesh tachtav 4 amos pesula. A large sukkah which is surrounded by materials which are invalid for schach. If there is a space of 4 cubits of 4 amos beneath it, says the Mishnah, posula. It is going to be pasul. Mishnah Yud Aleph, approaching the end of our first chapter for this evening. Boy, it's been quite a long one. Ha'oses sukkah sokamin sarif. If you construct your sukkah in the shape of a teepee, a cone-shaped hut, or shesamacha lakosel, or you basically just put up a plank, not a plank, but a sheet of schach from sloping from the floor to the side of a wall. I can show you a picture if it's confusing you, but the point is that there are no actual wall, no actual roof. It's just either focusing up to a point, so it's all wall, or it's sloping up against a wall, so it's all wall and there's no roof. So Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Eliezer says it's going to be pasul because it does not have a roof. The Chachamim are actually machshir it, they allow it, but the halacha is not like them. The halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer. Why do they allow it? Because, I'm not sure exactly why, but they allow it nonetheless. If you have a large reed mat, says the Mishnah, asar l'shchiva, if you buy this large reed mat and your intention is to sleep on it, mikabeles tuma ve'ein mesakechin ba, then it's going to be an item which can contract tuma, and therefore you now cannot use it for your schach. L'sikuch, if you buy it intending to use it as schach, says the Mishnah, mesakechin ba, then you can use it for schach, ve'eino mikabeles tuma, and it will not contract tuma. Rabbi Eliezer says, achas katana v'achas gadayla, whether it's a big mat or a small mat. Asar l'shchiva, if you intend to use it for resting, mekabeles tuma, then it now takes on a status that it can contract tuma ve'ein mesakechin ba, and you cannot use it as schach. lesikuch, but if you buy it with the in express intention of using it as schach, mesakachin ba, then you can use it for schach, the eino mekabeles tuma, and it will not contract tuma. Mazel tov, ladies and gentlemen, on completing the first chapter of Masechet Sukkah. Now, stupidly, I completely forgot to mention at the start that all of our learning tonight is Le'ilui Nishmas, Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, Zichron Levracha. So everything that we are studying is Le'ilui Nishmas Harav Yaakov Tzvi ben David Aryeh. So I should have mentioned that in the beginning. I'm mentioning it now. Either way, it still counts. And please God, it should be a big zechus for his neshama. Moving on then to chapter 2, things which will invalidate a sukkah. Says the Mishnah, Hayashen tachas hamita b'sukkah, a person who sleeps under his bed inside a sukkah, lo yatsa yedei chavasa. He will not fulfill his obligation to sleep in the sukkah. Why? Because he is now covered by something which is not kosher schach. A bed cannot count as kosher schach, so he is now not sleeping under kosher schach. And therefore, even if you've got a kosher sukkah and everything's amazing, but you're sleeping under a bed, you are not going to fulfill your mitzvah of sleeping in the sukkah. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, Noagin hayinu. We had the custom shehayinu yishenin tachas hamita b'fnei hazakenim. People knew about it, and we had the custom to sleep under. But it doesn't mean that they slept in front of zakenim the whole time, but it means that the zakenim knew that they were doing this. V'lo amru lanu davar. And they never said anything to us. So this would seem to indicate then that you can do it. However, the halacha is not in accordance with that practice. Amar Rabbi Shimon says, Maaseh b'Tavi Abdo Rabban Gamliel. There was a story about Tavi, the slave of Rabban Gamliel, who we have explored in Masechet Brachot. So we're meeting him again in Masechet Sukkah. So Tavi, the world famous servant of Rabban Gamliel, who was a very holy guy, even though he wasn't Jewish, Shahaya Yashen Tachas Amita, and he slept under a bed in the sukkah. Va'amar lahin Rabban Gamliel is Canaan, and Rabban Gamliel said to the elders, Re'item Tavi Abdi, have you seen my servant Tavi? Shehu Tamid Chacham is a very, very knowledgeable person. V'yodea sha'avadim paturim in the sukkah, and he knows that servants are exempt from sleeping in the sukkah. Lafichach yashenhu tachas hamita. Therefore, he sleeps under the bed. So even though he might be sleeping in the sukkah, he's not sleeping in a kosher way, in a valid way, underneath the sukkah. Ulafi darkenu lamadnu. And so, through this, we have learnt shehayashen tachas hamita lo yatsa yedei chavasa. That person who sleeps under a bed does not fulfill the mitzvah of sleeping in a sukkah. Mishnah base. Hasomech sukkaso b'karei hamita. A person who supports his sukkah with bedposts. Kashera. The din is that it's going to be kosher. So, if you have got a bed which meets the dimensions of a kosher sukkah, and then from the four corners of the bed, you have got your defanos, you have got your walls, which extend to an appropriate height. And then on top of that, you have got your schach. So your whole sukkah might just be a bed with schach, but it fulfills the required airspace of a kosher sukkah. So if you do it like that, the Mishnah says, Kshera. Rabbi Yehuda says, if it cannot stand on its own accord, however, it is going to be possible. Sukkah hamaduvleles, if you've got a sukkah, it says here a disorderly sukkah. In the diagram that I forgot to take a picture of to be able to show you on the screen, it's kind of like another one of these two-tiered schach situations, and the let's just show it on the picture. Let's just try and do it like this. It might not be incredibly clear, but it will hopefully do the trick. So what you've got is you have got, let's say, planks, little planks running across your sukkah, and they are on two levels, but they do not necessarily match up. They don't necessarily correspond between them. So it's either like that, if we can see that. So they're separated, but if you were to collapse them together, then they will fit in between each other. Or you may have a sukkah where the the pieces are in line with each other. So they may be separated like that, but when they're closed up together, they meet on top of each other. So that is how we may describe a sukkah hameduvleles. And if we were to show, it's not really so clear in the picture. But the point is as follows. Let's see if we can understand from the ruling in the Mishnah what we're talking about. So sukkah meduvleles, v'shetzilasa meruba mechamasa. As long as there is enough shade, as long as it's majority shade than it is sun, it is going to be kosher. So these multi-tiered beams are generating enough shade between them, but they are separated and not aligned with each other. If they were aligned in a way that the amount of sun is more than the amount of shade, where is that going? There. Then it is going to be invalid as a sukkah. So I hope that was somewhat helpful. And if it wasn't, I do apologize. So as long as the shade coming through this uneven schach situation is more than the sunlight, it is going to be kosher. If you've got schach which is so thick, there's literally no sun getting through, and it is so secure, it is so sturdy, and it is so robust, but there's no sunlight really getting through, even though you can't see the stars through it, kashera. As long as it is valid, kosher schach, even if it's really thick, it is still going to be kosher for use on sukkahs. Mishnah Gimel. If you build a sukkah on the top of a wagon or on the top of a van, where do we get that idea from? So a sukkah that's built on top of a wagon, or b'rosh hasfina, or it's built on the deck of a boat, kshera. It is going to be kosher for use as a sukkah, va'olin la b'yom tov, and you're going to be allowed to go up and use it even on Yom Tov. Says the Mishnah though, b'rosh ha'ilah, if you build a sukkah on the top of a tree, and it's entirely supported by the tree, or al gabi gamal, or you build a sukkah on the back of a camel, kashera, it is going to be kosher, but v'ein olin la b'yom tov. But you're not going to be able to use it on Yom Tov, and that's because you cannot be touching and using the animal on Yom Tov because it's muktzah. And the same with the tree. There's a concern that we're going to end up pulling something out of the tree, which we're not allowed to do. And so you can't ascend the tree to be able to utilize the sukkah. What if shtayim be'ilan va'achas bidei adam? What if two of the walls are supported by the tree, va'achas bidei adam, and one of the walls is man-made, or shtayim bidei adam, two of the walls are man-made, va'achas be'ilan, and one of the walls is situated on this tree, kashera, it's going to be a kosher sukkah, va'ein olin la b'yom tov. But you're not going to be able to ascend and use it on Yom Tov because, again, you're relying too much on the tree. What about shalosh b'dei adam va'achas be'ilah? What if three of the walls are man-made and they are supported by the physical ground, not by the tree, but one of the walls is supported by the tree? Then the Mishnah says, kashera, that it's going to be kosher, va'olin la b'yom tov, and you will be able to ascend it and use the sukkah even on Yom Tov. Za'aklal, this is our rule. As long as you can take away the tree and the sukkah would still be standing on its own, kashera, then it would be valid for use. Va'olin la b'yom tov, and you'd be allowed to ascend and go up into it. You know, we have to picture a ladder running up into this high tree house. So as long as it can stand without the support of the tree, then you can use it on Yom Tov. Mishnah Dalet. If you build a sukkah, or you're essentially creating schach across a bunch of trees, and the trees are functioning as the walls, so that the airspace is all accounted for, it's all closed up, it's all hunky-dory, you fulfilled all of the halachic criteria to create walls using rows of trees, and the thickness is all there, the airspace is all there, you've done all of that. So the walls are made of tree, and then you put kosher schach across the top. The Mishnah says, kashera, it is going to be a valid sukkah. Continues the Mishnah, shluchei mitzvah paturim min sukkah. People who have been appointed to fulfill a mitzvah on someone else's behalf. So we have this concept of ha'osek b'mitzvah patur min mitzvah. Someone who is engaged in one mitzvah is going to be exempt from doing other mitzvot. So if you have somebody already engaged with performing a particular mitzvah, he's got to go on a journey somewhere, for example. So such an individual is patur min sukkah. They are going to be exempt from having to do everything in the sukkah, to eat in the sukkah, to drink in the sukkah, to sleep in the sukkah. If they're unable to do that while they are in the process of fulfilling this mitzvah, they are going to be excused. Cholin, people who are sick, unwell, umasham shehen, and their attendants. Oh, brilliant, use the same word there. And their attendants, patur min sukkah, they're also going to be excused from sitting, eating, drinking, sleeping in the sukkah. And finally, the Mishnah says, Ochlin v'shosin arai chutz la sukkah. A person may eat, translated there as casually. So if you're not having a proper meal, or as we know from the practical implications of the halacha, if you're not eating mazonos, or if you're not eating or washing for a suda, then any of those foods can be consumed. Am I back? Can you hear me?
You are now, yes.
I'm really sorry. I mean, we were talking about the internet last week. I think it's just everyone on lockdown trying to use an internet. It's having an impact. Okay, we continue, ladies and gentlemen, with Mishnah Hay. Nothing will stop us from completing chapter 2. There was it happened once that they brought to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai during Sukkot, litam esatavshel, to come and taste a dish. Rabban Gamliel, and they brought to Rabban Gamliel shtei kosavos udli shamayim. They brought him 2 dates and a pail of water. Va'amru ha'alum la sukkah, and they said that they should insist on having them in the sukkah. So even though in one instance he was just having a tiny little taste of a dish, and in the other instance he was not having mazonos, he was not having he was just having dates and a bit of water, nonetheless they insisted on having those things in the sukkah. But when they brought something to Rabbi Tzadok, ochel pachos mikabetza, they brought him some food which was less than the size of an egg, netalo b'mapa, he took it in a napkin, va'achol chutz l'sukkah, and he was still able to eat it outside of the sukkah, v'lo beirach acharav, and because he hadn't eaten the required amount to make an after bracha, he didn't make an after bracha either. Continuing with Mishnah Vav. Am I in the right place? Yes. Mishnah Vav. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rabbi Eliezer says, Arba esrei seudos chayav adam le'echol b'sukkah, that a person is obligated to eat 14 meals in the sukkah over sukkahs. How does he get 14 meals? Achas bayom v'achas balayla. There are 7 days of sukkahs, especially in Israel. So if you're having a meal in the day and a meal in the night, you are having 14 meals in the sukkah, according to Rabbi Eliezer. The sages say, the rabbis say, there is no fixed number. The only time you have an obligation to eat in the sukkah is on first night Yom Tov. The rest of the time it is optional. Optional within reason, of course. If you're eating a suda, you have to eat it in the sukkah, but you're not obligated to eat 14 meals. If you don't have hamotzi on any of the other occasions, if you don't have mazonos on any of the other occasions, you will not be obligated to eat those in the sukkah. V'od amar Rabbi Eliezer, furthermore, Rabbi Eliezer said, Mi shelo achal leile yom tov harishon. Thought I was losing you there for a second. If you did not eat on the first night of Sukkot, yashlim beleile yom tov ha'acharon, then you can make it up any other night of the of Sukkot. For Chachamim Ramim, the sages say, Eila davar tashlumin, there's no way of making up for this. You have an obligation to eat on the first night, come what may. And so there is no way of compensating for a missed Su'udah. And that's why this year Rabbi Feldman had advised us that because of the rain, we should wait as long as we possibly can to start the Suda. And then even if you start inside and the rain clears up, you should go out and have some challah in the Sukkah so that you can fulfill the mitzvah of eating in the Sukkah on first night. Al-Zeh Ne'emar, on this we have a verse in Koheles, chapter 1, verse 15, Me'uvas lo yuchal litkon, something which is crooked cannot be made straight. V'chesron lo yuchal lihimanos, and something which is lacking cannot be counted, meaning you lose out if you do not have a meal on the first night. Continuing with Mishnah Zayin, Misha haya rosha v'ruba b'sukkah, a person whose head and most of his body is within the confines of the sukkah, v'shulchana b'toch habayis, but his table where he is eating from is inside the house. Beis Shammai poslin, v'beis Hillel machshirin. Beis Shammai say you are not going to be able to fulfill your mitzvah, let's say, of eating in the sukkah, I think because you are leaning over to eat, and so Beis Shammai will say pasul, Beis Hillel machshirin. Beis Hillel say as long as there's enough space of your sukkah to contain most of your body and your head, then they are going to hold it as kosher. That's why you can get these pop-up sukkahs, which are tiny, but they will fit a majority of your body and your head within them, and therefore, according to Beis Hillel, they are kosher. Amru lahem Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel said to Beis Shammai, Lo kach haya ma'aseh, did it not happen? Shehalchu ziknei Beis Shammai, that the elders of Beis Shammai, the ziknei Beis Hillel, the elders of the Academy of Hillel, they all went levakeres Rabbi Yochanan ben Acharani. They all went to visit. Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't scrolled down. They went to visit Rabbi Yochanan ben Acharani. Umatzauhu shahaya yoshev roshav v'ruba b'sukkah. They found that he was sitting in his sukkah, but it only had enough space, or only his head and the most of his body was sitting in the sukkah. The shulchan b'toch habayis, and the table was inside the house. V'lo amru lo davar, and they didn't say anything to him. So if the elders of the Academy of Shammai went to see this, and they didn't complain and say, hey, you're not fulfilling your mitzvah, so surely that means that the position of Beis Shammai would even agree. Amru lahem Beis Shammai, to which Beis Shammai said, Misham raya, that's your proof? Af heinem amrulo, im kein hayisa naheg, lo kiyamta mitzvah sukkah miyamecha. They actually did say to him, if that's how you've been practicing all this time, you've never fulfilled the mitzvah of sukkah in all of your life. And so Beis Shammai are consistent. They do say that it will be invalid. Beis Hillel say it will be kosher. Mishnah Test, second to last Mishnah of our chapter. Nashim va'avadim ukatanim, women, servants, and minors. Paturim in a sukkah. They are patur, they are exempt from the mitzvah of sukkah. Katan she'enot tzarich le'imo, if a minor has does not rely on his mother, which I think the Gemara, if I'm not mistaken, talks about this being if he was to wake up in the middle of the night and doesn't start crying out, "Mummy, mummy, mummy," then as long as he is not reliant, or he is not reliant on his mother in that way, then the Mishnah says, Chayav b'sukkah, then they are obligated in the commandment. Now I think this means you're obligated to mechanech them, to educate them that they're supposed to be in the sukkah. You'll have to tell me if it literally means he's chayav in the sukkah, but I'm not sure that it does. Does it say it in your books there? Am I just talking to myself? Probably. So we're obligated to educate him in sitting in the sukkah. There was a story that happened to the daughter-in-law of Shammai. She gave birth, and she opened up the ceiling, and she put schach on top of the bedposts, bishvil hakatan, in order that the minor, who is only a tiny little nipper, would be starting to absorb what it means to sleep in the sukkah over sukkahs, which is an extreme example of this, but an interesting, relevant point nonetheless. I think halacha l'maisa, the practical halachas are that you're chayev once you reach the age of bar mitzvah, but you are expected to educate your children once they are of an age to be able to understand what it means to sit in the Sukkah and to sleep in the Sukkah as well. Finally, Mishnah Test. Kol Shivas Hayamim, all 7 days of Sukkah, Adam Oses Sukkah Keva, Uvesa Arai. You are supposed to make your Sukkah your fixed abode. That is where everything happens. Uvesa Arai. And your house becomes your temporary shed. Yardu Geshamim, if it rains. Me'emasai Muta Lefanos. When is it permitted to leave the Sukkah and to go back into the actual physical safety of a permanent roof? The Mishnah says, Misha Tisrach Hamikpa. Once the rain that is falling is going to spoil your, says porridge there on the screen. I have it translated as lentil soup. The point is that the rain is ruining what you are trying to eat. Mashlu Mashal. And they made a parable about this. To what may this be considered? To what may this be compared? Le'eved Shabal Limzog Kosler Rabah. To a servant who comes to pour a cup of wine for his master, the Shafach Lokison Al Panav, and the master takes the jug, he takes the cup and he chucks it right in the guy's face. You're trying to do something amazing for Hashem, and Hashem is clearly showing us and demonstrating that He doesn't want us to do it for Him. Otherwise, why would He have sent rain and excused us from sitting in the Sukkah? Either way, Mazel Tov, everybody, on finishing chapter 2. And that's all we've got time for. So join us next week on Mishnah Mastery, when we will go into the 3rd and 4th, and possibly even 5th chapter of Masechet Sukkah. In the meantime, have a wonderful and meaningful week.
Thank you, Rabbi.